Bam! Dune. It's not your granddaddy's sci-fi. Wait. Published in 1965. Oh, fuck. Dune! It's a big old book. It's got layers within layers within layers. But it's really not the page count that gives the book depth. It's Frank Herbert's writing. So, full disclosure before we get into it, I have seen the movie and I've seen the miniseries by Sci-Fi, and I know there's another movie in the making. I actually liked everything that's been put out there. You know, I was a little kid when I saw the David Lynch film, and it scared the shit out of me, and I loved it for it. But I do know there's a lot of haters out there, so, you know, I kind of understand. They kind of feel like David Lynch took a big old shit in their still suit, didn't have the common courtesy to flush. Dune was written by Frank Herbert, which takes us roughly 20,000 years into the future, and people are now stretched across the stars. The story is essentially about two great houses and their ongoing feud. You've got House Atreides, House Harkonnen. Our protagonists of the book are Paul Atreides, son of Duke Leto Atreides. When the story starts, now Paul is 16 years old, and I don't really get a coming-of-age feel with him in this book. For me, it was much more of a coming-to-grips kind of tale. Anyway, like I said, he's 16 years old, but he's been raised by men. Really, he's been raised by killers. He's also been trained in the Bene Gesserit ways. We also have Lady Jessica, who's the concubine of Duke Leto, but she's no hoe. This is a member of the ancient Bene Gesserit sisterhood. These women, throughout time, have basically learned how to condition their minds and bodies to achieve like an unnatural power. They're not telepaths, they're not psychic, but what they are is mysterious as all hell. Something that should also be noted about the Bene Gesserit sisterhood is that over time they've also been running this selective breeding program. Essentially, they're trying to create a male Bene Gesserit, and he would be known as the Kwisatz Haderach. Now, I might have just butchered that. And trust me, if you don't know anything about Dune and you're reading this for the first time, you're going to butcher it too. But it's okay. The hardcores are going to kill us, but let's not bug them right now. Now, the story begins with House Atreides having to leave their homeworld of Caladan. They've been put in charge of the desert world Arrakis, otherwise known as Dune, by the Padishah Emperor. Now, there's a lot of major, minor houses scattered across the stars here in this universe, and just about every single one of them look at this planet like a shithole. So, having to leave your homeworld to go here, not exactly awesome. So, there is a catch, though. Arrakis is the only planet that spice can be produced. And what is spice? The spice melange is a drug. But it's much more than that. It's really like the most valuable commodity / resource / everything now. The technological kind of issues or whatever that we're in at this point in the future, there is no thinking computers, stuff like that. So there's a lot of people that rely heavily on the spice. Like I said, there's no computers, but what we have is mentats. They're like human computers. And if you want them to be able to come up with all the possible outcomes, they're going to need to use the spice. Now, once again, these guys aren't psychic. They're just really like being able to look into every nook and cranny and really be able to dissect everything down to the last little nitty-gritty bit. They're super impressive, but they're going to need the spice. Maybe even more importantly, do you want to get from point A to point B? Well, then you're going to need the Spacing Guild and the Navigators, who rely heavily on spice. Basically, if you want the wheels on the bus to go round and round, the spice must flow. Maybe not being the ideal move, but Duke Leto understands that being in charge of the spice production could mean great things for his house. When they arrive on Arrakis, it's not exactly a warm welcome. Basically, they're picking up where the Harkonnens left off, and I mean, it's really just a mess. they're also trying to navigate dealings with a whole new culture of people, the Fremen, who are essentially the desert people here on Arrakis. And at this point, the book doesn't so much take you for a ride as it really drags your ass through the sand. I mean, you're going to go through betrayal. You're going to go through political strife and power grabs. You're going to have a cultural crash course, which personally I loved about this book. You're going to be running from desert monsters. You're going to be riding desert monsters. It all comes to a head in the end when the rival houses finally have their showdown, as well as a little mix with the Emperor in there as well. Now I know I'm only scratching the surface here. Like I said, the book's been out for a long time. It was published back in the 60s. It's had a movie, and it's had a miniseries, and it's going to have another movie coming out. It's really hard to find people that don't know anything about Dune. It's also really hard to find something that hasn't already been said about Dune. But I'm here trying to get through to the slow reader or the guy that's really struggling. So maybe I'll go through what I liked and what could be good for you or not. What I want to talk about is the pacing of this book. For me, it went incredibly fast. This is probably the biggest book I've read. I mean, the copy I got, I think it was 794 pages. I read it in 2 weeks. That is insane for me. I know some people are like, 2 weeks. But for me, that is like a year ahead of schedule. So I was just blown away with how I was going through this book. Even my wife made a remark. I was like halfway through it. She walked through the living room, saw, and was like, "Oh, look at you." I have to admit, watching the movie and the miniseries has got to give me some kind of advantage here, right? So if you haven't seen them, will it be as fast paced as it was for me? I don't really know, and I would love if anyone could comment, like if they haven't seen any of the movies, they only read the book. Was it fast paced for you? Honestly, I think it really is, though. The movies really helped me smooth out some of the language talk and stuff like that. But the thing is, with this book, Frank Herbert did something where he put a lot of trust in the reader. It's not exactly a super descriptive book, which could be a pro or con depending on which way you lie. I don't mind this. I love being able to use my own imagination to fill in the blanks. But what Frank Herbert is doing is he's explaining a lot of stuff, and then he's hitting you with internal and external dialogues. So for me, it was like something is constantly happening in this book. It just never really got dull. It just kept pushing me forward. I really loved it. I usually set like a page limit to reach, and I kept breaking that limit. Like I said, the pacing in this book, personally for me, was great. And I do think that even as a slow reader or a beginner, you could get into this. Maybe also one of the things that was so great about being a slow reader reading this was I would read a chunk and then have to put it down. And not because it was boring or, it was because it was profound. I literally would have to put the book down. I'd be doing this. Like, oh, wow. No shit. Damn. I did that all throughout this book. I was amazed with how much stuff just made me sit there and think. And that's one thing I got to give a thumbs up to Frank Herbert. Man, you made me think. More so than maybe any other author. How about the environment and the tone? Man, I did not understand how much I loved harsh environments. I mean, I knew I liked twisted stuff, but dude, Arrakis is so good. I took from this book, which I couldn't take from the films, the true feeling of this desert planet. Frank Herbert had me thirsty while reading this book. And I'm not joking. I literally was craving water while they were in the desert. It blew my mind, and also just as you go through the book, you start to understand the harsh realities of desert life, and it's just kind of constantly being put, in you, and you're like, fuck, this is brutal, and I love it. It's a sci-fi book. How about some sci-fi creatures, right? The worms. Man, these things are insane. Oh, they're amazing. They're amazingly cool. Just they're pretty well described in here. As for for Herbert not being the super descriptive guy, I think that he nailed them. You know what I mean? I was able to see these things, like coming at me, and I mean, these are probably one of my favorite creatures ever created. Well, what about the characters? Well, the character's pretty badass. Whether this is another one of those things, whether where you lie, because the characters are rather powerful. They can be polarizing. There's a lot of things, but what I have heard from other people that have read the book, and they did have a complaint. The characters are not relatable, and I didn't really find them relatable either. But that wasn't a problem for me, and it's never really been a problem for me. Especially with stuff like sci-fi or anything that takes place years away in the future or in the past, because I find it hilarious when you watch a sci-fi movie that takes place thousands of years in the future and everybody acts like they're from the 90s. It's stupid. I guess what I'm getting at is you shouldn't be surprised if you're not relating to people that are 20,000 years older than you, all right? It's okay. I mean, I would hope that we could get a little bit better, in the future. But, I'll tell you, if you read the book, you'll know that there's still some very old human actions in there. You have honorable characters like Duke Leto Atreides. This guy is almost too honorable. Basically, he's a threat to the Emperor because how men just will fight and die for him gladly. You have one of my personal favorites, Gurney Halleck, who I believe is the Blade Master of the Atreides house. But really what he is a fucking battle bard, and that is awesome. Gurney Halleck is probably the most ride or die guy for the House of Atreides. He's just a really cool character. I thoroughly enjoyed him. I had never really thought of. Every time I see a bard, it's always he's not very intimidating or anything like that. So Gurney Halleck is amazing. Maybe you like your villains? Look no further. The Baron Harkonnen. This guy is a big old beast of a smart, sinister asshole. I mean, this guy is just you love to hate him. And I'd have to admit, like, from the David Lynch film, the Baron was really one of the people that scared the shit out of me, and I really liked that, though. That imagery always stuck with me, and I loved it. But I took a whole different feeling from the Baron from the book, and that was that he was just sinister in his mind, man. This guy has plans, and he's got plans inside those plans, and he's got plans inside those plans. He's got stuff constantly in motion, and he might be big and obese, but he's no slouch. Or maybe you want a really twisted guy, huh? Yeah, yeah. Look no further. Piter de Vries. This guy is a Mentat. He's actually the Baron's Mentat, and he's probably the creepiest dude in this book, man. I don't know exactly what to pinpoint, but reading his parts in the book, I could really see this character, and he just creeped me the fuck out. And I like that. So, good on you. I know what you're thinking. What the It's 2020. Where's the strong female characters at? Well, everywhere in the book. Literally every female character that Herbert writes is strong. I swear. I was blown away with this, actually. Considering this book was written in the 60s, I don't think that was a time of gender equality. And so for Herbert to write like all these women this way, I feel is like way ahead of his time. It's truly impressive. I mean, I don't think anyone from today can go back and start like trying to cancel Herbert because he was doing what you wanted way back then. And it's amazing. And, we'll give you some examples. Obviously, the Lady Jessica, she is no joke throughout this book. Honestly, the closer I got to the end of the book, the more I almost thought that she was the true protagonist. I know I haven't touched a whole lot on Paul, but I want you to kind of figure that out for yourself. And it's not that Paul is evil. It's just, man, there's a lot of going on and changing in this book, and it's beautiful. You also have Cheney, the love interest of Paul Atreides, and he calls her Desert Flower, but man, she can be lethal, and she can also be super respectful, and also it was really neat to see how she can separate her roles. Like if she can take her Paul hat off to play her part in her society. There's even another character that's not even that big of a character in the book. I believe her name is Hera or Hera. Either way, this character, I mean, rightfully could have been written very pathetic, but isn't. This is a woman that just, no matter what her situation, she's always going to do what she needs to be in the best situation she can for her and her kids. And it was just, like I said, this stuff is impressive that it's been written so long ago. Another thing that Herbert does a lot in this book is plays on human tropes. Now, there's a lot I could pick from, but the one that I think I really saw glaring at me that stuck out to me the most was how we underestimate other people, their culture, their religion, just everything about them. Everybody in this book, everybody outside of Arrakis underestimates the Fremen people, which, if you read the story, you'll understand it was not a good idea. But it's also, it's very believable the way it's written, and like I said, it's a very human trope. If you can just take a second to think about it, people that have been living up here forever eventually begin to underestimate and not even understand everybody that's down here. Now I know some of you are thinking, what the hell? You said we were going to do books for slow readers. Like I said, the pacing is, it's on point. I have to admit that I had some help, but still, I truly believe that the pacing in this book, whether you've seen the show or the movie or not, I think it's just set up well. It's going to hit you with information, it's going to hit you with dialogue, it's going to keep you moving. And trust me, I get it. When I see a big old beast of a book, my first intention is to run away. No! But don't let that happen. This is a classic, and there's a reason why they call them classics, and that's because they're timeless, man. You can literally read this thing anytime, and it's going to be good. It's 2020, 1965, and honestly, I don't know if there's a more relevant book right now. I mean, this thing is crazy. Set a page count, do it daily or bi-daily, or, I mean, if you're, no rush, weekly, whatever, stick to your page count. You can do it. And literally, once you finish this book, you are going to feel like you accomplished something. Now, don't go around bragging too much, because the hardcores will put you in your place real quick and remind you that there are other novels to read. But, here's the thing. I have to admit, a lot of times I'm very skeptical in going into a series, like a book that has a series, because I don't know if I got time for that. And I don't know if I have time for all 6 Dune books, but I'll tell you this, I've already made a commitment for at least the next 2, Messiah and Children of Dune. If you're struggling, having a hard time, maybe you're new, there are some words and some stuff in here that's going to trick you up. My suggestion is just pronounce it the way that you think it's pronounced right out the bat, and just run with it. At the end of the book, maybe if you love it and you want to become a Dune fan, then, figure out the right pronunciations. But I do feel like that can hang you up. And so just smooth it over, man. Just pronounce it the way you think it is. Keep going. Finish that book. Hopefully you're convinced and you're off to get a copy. I found mine at a used bookstore and I proceeded to beat it up pretty badly. I think I'm going to send it to my friend Bill. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know the quality is not the greatest. Hopefully the content hit you somewhere. If not, feel free to bitch about it in the comments. If you liked it, I would love to hear from you. Let's see. Oh, yeah. I got zero subscribers. So, I mean, basically whoever joins up, especially at this point, I'll talk to you all you want. Later, guys.